Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 reasons you may actually be better off skipping college. For many of us, it was drilled into our brains from birth that college, or university as we say in the UK, was a necessary step to success. And for many people, well, it is, but certainly not for everybody. There are several downsides to getting a college education, and we all seem to gloss over them because we're convinced that it is an absolute necessity. College is a great time and it leads to great things for a lot of people, but it can result in a net loss for others. Whether it's worth it for you is a very tough decision for anyone to make, especially if they're just 18. Too many jump into it without thinking, and that's fine if you can go for free, but that's usually not the case. For most, it's a major investment, and probably the biggest they've made in their life so far. We're not saying that you shouldn't go to college, just making that clear. We're just saying that it's really important to take time to think about it. It's important to look at it not just as the assumed next step, but as an investment. And like any investment, you should weigh the potential reward against the costs and risks. And whatever you do try to keep that debt down. And do note here that these statistics in this article refer to American colleges. If you live somewhere else, you'll have to do your own research, and we apologize about that, but most of you guys watching are Americans. Number 10. Only 53% of students graduate in 6 years or less. College is often described by cynical older people as the best 4 years of your life. While the idea of being the best time of your life is often debated, people kind of just accept the 4 years part. That's the story that is told to us by society, by the media, and by the colleges themselves. In fact, bachelor's degrees are often alternatively referred to as 4-year degrees. However, if you look at how long it actually takes students to graduate, the term doesn't really make much sense. Unfortunately, barely half of all students graduate in 6 years. Yep, you read that absolutely right. It's not 4 years, but 6. The mythological 4-year college is a rare feat achieved by only a select few. And almost half of students either drop out or haven't graduated after 6 years. By 2015, only 53% of students who had enrolled in 2009 had graduated. The numbers aren't so bad if you're a traditional student attending an accredited college. The data we're looking at here does include non-traditional students and those attending private for-profit schools. And there's a lot of bad things to be said about for-profit schools, but one of the big ones is that you are more likely to not finish them on time. Only around a third of students at for-profit colleges graduate in 6 years. According to another report, women who enter school after the age of 20 take the longest to finish, with an average of 9 years. That's longer than it takes the average PhD student to finish their degree. While going back to school is often regarded as an admirable move, it sure is a risky one. Number 9. Education costs are rising faster than inflation. The cost of education, it continues to rise and rise. And you might say to that, well, prices for everything are rising, right? It sucks, but it's just inflation. That would make sense, but the cost of education continues to rise even though general inflation has halted. And even worse, financial aid isn't rising with it, so net prices are going up for all students, even those from low-income families. Over the past 20 years, college costs have dramatically outpaced inflation. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, inflation increase from 1995 through 2015 was around 55%. So how much higher do you think the increase for higher education was? 70%? 100%? It can't be much more than that, right? Well, you're absolutely wrong. The price of education at public in-state universities, usually the cheapest options, rose a colossal 296%. That's over 5 times greater than the inflation increase. Colleges have increased their prices by a more moderate rate in the last few years, but it doesn't really matter. The net price has continued to increase because incomes and financial aid are increasing at a lower rate. Fortunately, students have been borrowing less recently, possibly because of an increase in grants. In the 2015 to 2016 school year, students only borrowed $104 billion. Only, which was down from the peak of $124 billion in 2010 to 2011. That's a small $20 billion step in the right direction, at least. Number 8. Student debt has reached a new high. American colleges set a record this year. It's a record we've broken several times, though. Unfortunately, it's not a record for best prepared students or best parties. Once again, student debt in the US is higher than it has ever been before. All told, the student debt is a frightening $1.31 trillion. Debt has increased consistently over the last 18 years, and outstanding loans have doubled since 2009. This is more of an increase than any other form of household debt. Total, it's now the second second biggest form of household debt, ranking behind only mortgages. Decreases in borrowing in the last couple of years has not been enough to slow down debt growth. The debt is spread among 44 million borrowers, but that's still a pretty hefty amount per person. The average graduate in 2016 had over $37,000 in debt. It sounds absurd that so many people start off their careers with negative money, but it's a sad truth that most people who attend college will graduate with less money than when they started. Number 7. 40% of those with student loans aren't paying. Needing to pay off all that debt, it really sucks. Having to scrape together the money each month to pay on time is really stressful. Well, almost half of graduates aren't actually paying because they can't. 40% of students can't pay, representing over $200 billion in federal student loans. That's not even taking into account the students with private loans. And if you don't pay, it just gets way worse. If you default on a loan, the government can take money out of your wages, hold your tax refund, or even sue you. We've got to assume that the odds are against you when you go against an establishment that big. Imagine playing chess against the US Chess Federation. The government, whoever that means in this case, probably knows the court system way better than you do. So let's recap. The average student loan amount is almost $40,000. Debt is higher than ever. Barely half of all students graduate in 6 years, and it just keeps getting more expensive each year. And, well, guess what? There's way more to come. Number 6. The cost of textbooks is also rising faster than tuition. Tuition isn't the only cost associated with college. Housing, travel, and fees also get added on top of that. Way too many students are spending money they don't have to study abroad while not taking any classes. That's optional, so while still upsetting, it can be avoided. However, textbooks are an expense that can't be avoided. At least, that's what the schools and the textbook publishers want you to believe. Textbooks make up a surprisingly large chunk of a student's expenses. Costs can vary wildly based on classes, but the College Board recommends students budget around $1,200 per year for books and supplies. This is way more than they used to cost. Since 2006, the average textbook cost has risen by 73%. That's 4 times faster than inflation. It's important to save money however you can, especially when the total cost is so large, and some textbooks aren't really necessary to do well in a class. We're not saying don't buy your books, but do some research, see if other students can tell you if you actually need the book, or just wait until the first day and ask the professor. Number 5. Higher application rates makes things harder for students and colleges. Since applying to college has become easier, students have been applying to more and more colleges each year. Because of this, colleges end up having fewer students that are accepted to attend. This makes it difficult for colleges to plan their budgets because they aren't sure what enrollment will look like. It also makes getting accepted more competitive and gives an advantage to wealthy students who can afford to apply to many more schools. This is essentially a problem of economics. The demand for college is so high, but the supply of it at any particular college is limited. Every student wants to go to the best school they can. Because of this imbalance, colleges can charge exorbitantly high prices and will still be able to meet their admission quotas. This often leads to a difficult dilemma for decent but not excellent students. They often have to choose between paying to go somewhere prestigious or taking a scholarship to go to a less well-respected school. One might argue that this pollutes the so-called meritocracy. As long as money is a factor in who gets to go to which school, a true meritocracy is impossible. Number 4. Students are stressed, socialize less, and rate their well-being at record low levels. One of the criticisms often hurled at the youth is that they are lazy. They don't know what it was like back in the day when the previous generation worked harder and had less fun than they could possibly imagine. In many cases, this is true though, especially if applied to physical labor, which the younger generation definitely does less of. But when it comes to schoolwork, the lazy moniker doesn't really ring true. In fact, school has become harder over time, not easier. As college has become more rigorous and the focus on admissions has increased, students have become increasingly focused on studying and they spend less time socializing and making friends. According to a survey, college freshmen spent half as much time hanging out with friends than students from 1987 when the survey was first given. Because of the increased pressure to succeed, students today feel more stressed than at any time before. According to a survey, students' emotional well-being is also rated at record low levels. College is shown in the media as being a place of constant partying and sex and relaxing, but this is far from an accurate picture. Too many students aren't having enough fun. Number 3. You probably can't go to your first choice, even if you get in. Here's some seemingly bright news. Most students get into their first choice school. In fact, over 75% of students get admitted to their top choice. Unfortunately, less than 60% of students can actually afford to attend. Let's say you're a high school student in Iowa and you get into your dream school, UC Berkeley. You'll be excited until you realize that you can't afford to go unless you get in a crazy amount of debt. And then you're faced with a choice. Do you take out a fortune of a loan to go where you want, or do you go to Iowa like all your other friends whose parents can't afford for them to leave? Now, not to dig on Iowa here, we're sure it's a great place in many ways, but not everyone wants to stay there. However, many students are forced to do just that because of money. This is especially prevalent if the school you want to go to is out of state. While the average tuition fees of an in-state college is under $10,000, out of state is around $25,000, which is 2.5 times greater just because of where you live. Does that really sound like a fair system to you? One might consider that this has to do with state taxes, but that has nothing to do with a high school student. Their parents pay taxes, and they don't. Why should they be so limited because of where their parents choose to live? Number 2, you won't necessarily learn much. Apart from the economic benefits, college is supposed to teach you critical thinking skills. As many annoying liberal arts college recruiters say, they help teach you how to think. However, for many students, they don't even accomplish that one Orwellian-sounding goal. School is supposed to be a place of higher learning, and sure, all students will learn some new facts that they didn't know before, but in a study, a full 45% of students showed no significant improvement in their critical thinking, reasoning, and writing skills during the first 2 years of school. After 4 years, 36% still showed no improvement. That's a terrible outcome. I mean, imagine if you signed up to a martial arts school and 4 years later, you weren't any better at fighting. You'd be pretty mad, wouldn't you? I mean, the school told you they were going to give you a specific result which you paid a lot of money for. To some, that might even cause them to call the whole thing a scam. Not to us, but to some. Number 1. There are several alternatives. First off, college is the right choice for a lot of people. But if you're going to go, do a ton of research on cost, reputation, teaching, and career outcomes. Unless you get a scholarship, your in-state university will probably be the best value. For some, going to school overseas might even actually be cheaper. You have to figure out what's going to work best for you, and that might be not going at all. But if you're not going to go to college, what are you supposed to do instead? Just stay at home and play Mario Kart? As fun as that sounds, you probably don't want to do that for the rest of your life, and, well, even if you do, your parents probably won't be thrilled about it. Luckily, well, there are several legitimate alternatives out there. You can start off at community college, which is generally much cheaper and will get you through your first 2 years of prereqs. If you prefer working with your hands, you can try get an apprenticeship of some kind. You can learn a trade like plumbing or welding. You can enlist in the military, or if you're feeling up to it, you could even start your own business. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also over there on the right, a couple of other videos that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one, and thank you for watching.
So you're still here, still watching this video. Maybe you just let it run and you're not actually there anymore. Whatever the case, if you're listening to this, I think you should go check out my new channel. It's called Biographics. It is biographies of notable historic figures, as well as present day people. Let me give you some examples. We got the Queen of England, Vladimir Putin. Those just 2 people on the world stage. We've also got Elon Musk coming up, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Even the first serial killer, H.H. Holmes? Maybe just H.H. Holmes. We look at all sorts of people, longer form, about 20 minutes long, diving into the story of their lives in a similar style to this. It's Biographics. If you like this channel, if you like my other stuff, you're gonna like this as well. Biographics, there is a link in the description below. Do go check it out, and please do subscribe.